Hello everyone. I hope you have gone over the prelims mode and started preparing for mains. Welcome to the first session on GS paper 4 Ethics, Integrity and Aptitude under the Marks Improvement Program. So before starting the class, we are very happy to announce that our last year essay student P. Shravan Kumar, he had secured an All India rank of 222 and one of the highest marks in ethics, 139 marks. On that note, we have two major programs running for ethics. The first one is the Ethics Mark Improvement Program. This will be a 20-hour concept class sessions, and the second one, Ethics Mains Test Series. Here what we will be doing is, you will be writing normal test series. After that, your correction will be done face to face, that is in front of you. We will be sitting together and discussing major part of your answer. What exactly can be done more? Where you are lacking, which conceptual clarity you are lacking, what more reading you should be doing, or what pattern of mistake you are repeating. So all these things we will be discussing in person during the answer correction. It is not about just giving a written feedback, n number of feedback so that you can get confused or not implement anything. Here we will be having a discussion and you will be giving objectively this XYZ should be done in the next test. So this will be doing in the face-to-face evaluation of under the ethics mains test series. You can join either of the courses or both as per your convenience. Let's move ahead. So before starting the class, I want to be very clear on what you can expect under this class. So how you can score exceptionally good marks in ethics? There are a few basics or fundamentals you should be very thorough with. With this objective, we have designed all these classes. First thing is having absolute clarity on syllabus and everything that is mentioned in the syllabus. Each and every word, what is the difference? What are different dimensions under it? You should be absolutely clear. What are the dimensions of ethics? What are consequences of ethics? What are determinants of ethics? What does this mean? What is difference between honesty and integrity? What is difference between accountability and responsibility? You should be absolutely clear with these terms. That is the first thing. So throughout the classes, we will have a detailed discussion on every terms that is mentioned in the syllabus, every dimension that is mentioned in the syllabus. That is the first part. Second part is you should be able to make diverse set of arguments. Diversity of arguments is what add value to your answers. Mostly we are seeing the question, nature of questions are also changing. More and more quotation type of questions are coming. So how to open dimensions in these questions? Students face difficulties in this. And it is the diversity of arguments, it is the quality of arguments. These two things are going to define your ethics marks. So how to bring diversity of arguments into your answer writing? Especially in case of quotation, section 8, we are talking about majorly. Thirdly, whatever arguments you are making, you should be having some data, some example to substantiate it. These examples data should also be diverse. It should not happen that you are repeating same kind of XYZ in every answer. This also I happen to see in many papers. So how to overcome these issues? Here what we are doing is, for every term in the syllabus, you will be given a framework to think upon. This is the approach you should apply to every syllabus. Suppose a question come from determinants of ethics, just apply the framework so that it will be already having 5-7 dimensions open. Now think on what all arguments under each heads you can make. Customize this framework that is already provided to you in the class, in the workbook. Then customize this into the what XYZ is the requirement of the question. So this is how we are going to increase the quality of our arguments as well as bring diversity into it. Secondly, one major other factors that is too much important in ethics is bringing uniqueness to your paper. It is not about reading a one XYZ book or reading a set of examples and replicating it in the paper. You can expect scoring exceptionally high marks. That will not happen in ethics. In ethics, you need certain kind of uniqueness. And how you can bring uniqueness into a paper? Include arguments from your own life experiences. You have done job in military, you have done job in medical field, you have volunteered for some XYZ. Bring all these arguments into the table and into the ethics paper. Secondly, Never compartmentalize ethics. Never compartmentalize, collect examples only for ethics. Whenever you are studying history, apply some ethical principles which we will be discussing. Apply something, some concept which you have already learned in ethics. Collect examples when you are studying GS1, GS2, GS3, or always optional also. And get this value addition into your ethics content. It is not like you are studying totally separately XYZ for ethics. When you are reading newspapers, you find something, add into your notes. So this is what the second thing. Thirdly, you have to bring so many other elements like books you have read, movies you have watched, or any other short stories, fiction, non-fiction, anything you have read, you should bring the thought into your ethics paper. How you can do all this? If you want to reflect all this in your paper, you have to do an exercise. You should have a consolidated material that collects everything. With this objective, we have a workbook under this ethics marks improvisation program. This workbook will have a clear definition of whatever the XYZ terms is, what is the basic arguments you can make under each head, and some examples and substantiation. But half of the paper will be left for this. Here we will have these definitions, arguments, way thinking framework, everything will be given here. Half of the paper you have to add value into it. You have to add examples into it. This will be around a 50-page material where half of the information will be pre-hand provided under the program. Next half you have to build over the next 3 months. I'm pretty sure if you devote at least some time every day, whenever you get free time, you are looking at Instagram, you are looking at Facebook, you got something relevant to ethics, you add the examples into this material. And it's just 50-60 pages maximum, even after you add 10 more pages to it. And this 60 pages you can easily revise between the GS3 and GS4, 2 hours. So that much consolidated a material you have to develop by the time of exam. And you have to revise this many number of times so that the examples we are talking, the books we are talking in the class, the movies we are discussing in the class, so much movies, arguments we are already covering in the class. This get internalized into your mindset. This get internalized into the arguments you make. So this is the overall construct of this course. And on this note, we have to start our classes. So overall today's class is mainly restricted to ethics and human interface. So we'll be discussing majorly the aspects, dimensions, arguments related to personal ethics. Ethics, its determinants and consequences of ethics in human actions, dimensions of ethics, ethics in private and public relations, human values, role of family, society, educational institutions in inculcating values. All these syllabus head we will be discussing under the first class. So these are some of the specific questions we are looking to ponder upon. What exactly is ethics? What ethics seek to promote in human life? What decides how we take our decisions? Values, how are values formed? Role of family informing values, role of educational institutions, role of society, ethics, how it is differentiating or how it is related to morality. Ethics, how it is related to law, religion, similarly social norms. All this we will exploring under the first class. Let's get started. Let's try to understand what exactly is ethics. We have different stories or different figures which we already know. Look at the first image. It is an image of Arjuna. If you remember, why exactly Arjuna won the war of Mahabharata? Or what was the right thing he has done? What is the right thing he has done? Only one thing if he has done is he has upheld his dharma. And it was this message to uphold his dharma that was passed on by Krishna as Bhagavad Gita. So what ethics or what philosophy he followed was uphold his dharma. That's why he won the war. He got the XYZ success he was seeking. Now come to the second person. Who is he? Who is she? None other than Mother Teresa. What exactly is the philosophy or ethics of Mother Teresa? Mother Teresa lived her whole life with one fundamental, that is to dedicate life for welfare of poorest of poor, to live life with a life of compassion, empathy, and self-sacrifice. So much examples, from collecting food from airplane, from collecting food from railway stations, streets, houses, and bringing it to the poorest of poor sections of society. You can see n number of examples. So she dedicated her life for the welfare of poorest of poor. That's why we still remember her. That's how she achieved whatever she wanted through her life. Now come to Mahatma Gandhi. What is the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi? What exactly Gandhi stated? Mahatma Gandhi was a highly religious person. In today's construct, it may feel strange, but he was one of the most religious nationalist leaders. And what philosophy Gandhi believed in? Gandhi believed that the ultimate goal of human life is to self-realization. And what exactly self-realization means? Self-realization means understanding the truth or satya. And what is the pathway to is? The pathway is ahimsa and non-violence. It is this morality, you can say, or it is this idea, personalized thinking, that brings in ethics, or that means brings personal ethics into all the actions Gandhi has taken. Whether it is the non-calling of non-cooperation movement in the name of the movement itself is going into violence, or whether it is the giving a slogan of do or die during Quit India movement. For whatever actions Gandhi has taken, his whole life is based on whatever this XYZ ethical philosophy we have discussed so far. So what you can see here, all these three people from different walks of life. She was for a Christian missionary person. She believed in Christianity, while the other two persons are totally different religious beliefs. All of them lived in different kind of eras. So despite all these differences, what brings them together? Even their principles are different. Dharma is different, self-sacrifice is different, self-realization is different. What they were seeking in life itself was different. But despite all these differences, what is something common to all of this? They followed some principles, they applied some principles in their life, which we call today as ethics, or which we call today as ethical. So this is what you have to understand. Ethics is not a prescriptive science. Ethics is not telling you to live by helping poorest of poor, or ethics is not telling you to do self-realization or follow your dharma. But ethics give you a framework. Ethics give you a framework what exactly you should be doing. What is the right thing to do? What is not the right thing to do? To understand this, it gives you a framework. This is what ethics does. And it is not just a theoretical concept that related to moral leaders or scholars or founders. You can see its application in every day or every walks of life. So you have seen, might have read these articles, something like this. New kind of equipments, new kind of technologies are being used to cheat examinations. Cheating examination is also one of the we can call it as non-ethical act. Similarly, man sued app for poor service and gets 99K refund and 30K compensation. So the app was selling its courses, its edtech app. It was selling its courses on false premises. So this news was also in news. Similarly, you can see the Indigo Airlines, which denied its boarding to a 11-year-old specially abled kid, and it was under severe criticism. Similarly, IT firms accused of forcing employees to sign undated resignation letters. So all these acts we read in newspapers on day-to-day basis. What exactly is wrong with all this? it is in violation with certain principles we believe in. It is not in line with fairness, you can say, equality, you can say, honesty, you can say, integrity, accountability, public service. It is against some principles and values we believe in. And to understand this broad framework, what exactly constitute right or what exactly constitute wrong, how to understand this, the framework for that is being provided by ethics. In technical terms, ethics is a branch of philosophy that deals with what is considered right or wrong, good or bad, just or unjust. The key objective of ethics is it provides a framework to understand what is right and what is wrong. The framework is the most important keyword you should take away from this class. Ethics is not prescriptive. Ethics is not upholding X value above Y. It is not the purpose of the ethics. Ethics purpose is to bring a framework how you should approach a situation, how different value conflicting situation, how you can tackle it, what should be, can be different perspectives you can apply into it. Bringing this framework into picture is what ethics is. That's why it is a branch of philosophy. That's why it is a science. Now, what exactly is basis of ethics? See, what is difference between ethics and religion? You can see so many similarities between ethics and religion. Ethics promotes good values, like we have seen in case of Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Arjun. It promotes to do your responsibilities correctly. It promotes to uphold honesty. It promotes self-sacrifice to others. Despite all this, all principles are somehow or other captured in religious beliefs also. But what is the one thing that separates religion from ethics? That is, religion is based on faith and beliefs. There is no solid reasoning for whatever XYZ is written in the religion. It is based on faith. You have to believe it, irrespective of questioning it. But ethics is a science that is based on questioning, that is based on critical thinking and rationality. Critical thinking and rationality. Who exactly is this? This is the famous statue of Socrates. He is regarded for his great contributions as the father of ethics. Now he says the founder, the core basis of ethics is nothing but critical reasoning and rationality. You see in a custom, like recently we have so much controversies going on Parda issue in educational institutions. So what you have to, instead of taking an argument as a fact, you have to start questioning it. How is Parda creating an issue for women? Or how is Parda an issue in educational institutions? How exactly you should raise question and try to understand. That should be the approach of ethics. And this method of asking question and critically analyzing something, this method we call it as Socratic method. It is also not too much alien to India. We have this book, Milinda Panha. You might have already seen this. A question also came on this in the prelims 2023. What the book says, it is a discourse of questioning and answers between the Buddhist saint Nagasena and the Greek king. So this method has been in India also. This has been in practice in Indian customs, Indian literature also. Let's try to move ahead. Now try to answer this question from whatever knowledge we have gained so far. Try to answer this question in, take some, if you're watching the video, pause the video and try to note down some of the points. What will be your introduction? What is different arguments you are going to make in this question? The unexamined life is not worth living. What does the above statement mean to you? I hope you have done the exercise. So what are the arguments? We are not going to answer the question in detail, but I will give you some framework, some approach you should be applying. The unexamined life is not worth living. Examined life or examination is the key focus of this question. So how you going to approach this? First dimension of your answer should be importance of examination in life. Now try to connect it with different aspects. In your personal life, what is the importance of examination? It brings a sense of self-awareness. In your personal life, it brings a sense of self-awareness. It encourages certain virtues of competition, courage, team spirit, leadership. You can see in sports. It is due to this competition we have certain virtues getting upheld. It builds competence. I have seen people fighting for XYZ exam. It instills certain qualities in these people. Civil service, exactly, you need so much of perseverance to clear these papers. So also try to instill some of the XYZ qualities. Similarly, you can develop so much examples in economy. Mr. N.R. Narayana Murthy has came up with a recent statement. Competition is the best management principle. So similarly, you can relate it with every aspects of life. In politics, how competition is important. In international relations, how it is valued. All this you can develop. And now another aspect student will directly relate is, next part of your answer will be, while examination is so much important, examination is not everything. That is, you are countering the statement. If you are countering the statement, here you are made 6 points. Here you will make 3-4 points. Now, how to counter these statements? How you can counter statement from two aspects. One is examination aspect, one is worth living aspect. What is examination aspect? How you can counter? Can you examine every aspect of life? Can you examine qualities, intangible qualities like honesty, integrity? It's very difficult to exactly quantify it. It's very difficult to measure it. Even though we have GS4 paper in UPSC examination, is everyone being selected in UPSC ethical people? It's very difficult to have examination in every aspects of life. Similarly, is examination always correct, or is examination always logical? Sometimes examination is having biased. Tamil Nadu was having so much fight against NEET. Why they are having so much issues with NEET? Because they had already had a system that is benefiting the poor students of Tamil Nadu. Now that is being replaced by a national level exam and NEET that is not benefiting the poor students from Tamil Nadu in medical sector. So that's why Tamil Nadu people were protesting against it. Even though this NEET is a centralized system, it brings so much of fairness, uniformity into the examination, but still it was working against some sections of society. That's why so even though we appraise competence or examination, but sometimes that is not enough. You can always cite some ethical issues, knowledge without ethics, competence without ethics cases. Simply promoting competition will not give you betterness of life. Simply getting competence is not enough. There should be values, there should be ethical importance. You can cite some examples. Now, it is very important. These two dimensions I see in most of the papers, but it is very important you should bring some other dimensions also into the picture. That is, you should try to negotiate between these two. Even though examination is important, examination is of course important, but it is not as much as worth living. Examination is not an end in itself. Examination is so much important in life, But examinations cannot be an end in itself. We can cite examples of student suicides, like rich states like Kerala or Chandigarh. These states are having highest level of student suicides. Why exactly these states are having student suicides? Because the society is taking examination as an end in itself. So what we should be doing is, examination is quite important in life, but it is not an end in itself. It is a means to achieve something. Why you have preparing for UPSC? Clearing UPSC is not your major objective. It is what you do after clearing UPSC that should be your motivation. That should be your primary focus. So this dimension you should bring forward. Then you can write a way forward and finish your answer. So at least 4 dimensions in all quotation question I should see. This you can, if there is scope for expanding this, you can write one more dimension also. But at least 4 dimensions should be there. That is the first one, that is in line with the what is the meaning of the quotation. This you will probably do. Secondly, one arguments that is against what is the idea of the what is idea that is given. Then we have a negotiating statement in between what is the idea propounded by the, not against, not totally against or not totally in line with the idea of the quotation. You are trying to find a middle path. Then a way forward, and we should write a conclusion. In conclusion, always try to connect it with some current events in ethics. You write a real example, you write a real news that you have read somewhere and conclude your answer. This should be your overall approach. It's very easy to generate. If you can divide the answer under 4-5 different heads, becomes easy task to generate 15 points. Otherwise, it's become, if you think on one dimensional, then it becomes more difficult. Now with coming upcoming classes, in person life, like what should be your approach of thinking, in public life, what should be your approach of thinking, in any applied XYZ you get something, what should be your approach of thinking. Everything we will be discussing in the upcoming parts. Let's move ahead now. Now let's try to understand what is ethics through different characteristics or different debates in this field that is going on. Is ethics absolute or relative? Absolute is school of thought. What does it mean? Absolutist school of thought believes that there are certain ethical principles that is applicable universally. Some principles should be applied irrespective of culture, society, religion, time, place. Irrespective of all these factors, there are some ethical principles, maybe fundamental principles like honesty, not stealing, not murdering. These principles are universal to all societies throughout the world. These are human values, these are human characteristics or human features. So this is what the argument of absolutist school of thought. While relativistic school of thought argues that ethics cannot be absolute. What ethics is, what is the right thing to do, this is totally a subjective matter, and it varies depending on time, depending on place, depending on individual, depending on society, depending on culture, depending on religion. It all changes depending on circumstances. There is nothing like absolute school of thought or absolute values or absolute ethical principles. So this conflict of which school of thought is correct, where exactly ethics come in, this is always a debate. It's still a continuing debate in this subject. If we look at our religious, we ponder some question. A religious school of thought absolutist? Most of the religious, especially the Abrahamic religions like Christianity or Islam or Judaism, all these religions promote certain XYZ characteristics, certain XYZ morality as the must follow morality. You should not do this means you should not do this, irrespective of whatever is the XYZ circumstances. Most of this religious school of thought promote the ethics of absolutism. But this is not always true. There are school of thoughts like Hinduism, where There is no single absolute point of reference. There are different multiple school of thoughts within the Hindu school of thought, and there are school of thought which promotes relativistic way of thinking also. Hope the similarly Jainism and Buddhism, where it will be categorized. Where you categorize ideas of Buddhism and Jainism, are they absolutist or are they relativistic? Do comment in the comment section. Do let me know what is your perspectives on this. Let's move ahead. Let's try to understand Gandhian ethics. It's very curious, like I already told. At its core, Gandhian ethics is based on belief in the existence of an absolute truth. And this absolute truth is what is called as Satya. And ahimsa is the path to achieving this Satya. And that is the highest form of morality. It is from this personal morality, every political decisions of Gandhi, every social decisions of Gandhi, every act or every major decision Gandhi has taken, everything arises from this XYZ morality. Truth is the substance of all religions. He brings in the unanimity or similarness of all the religions. So even despite a person who believed in a strong morality, even despite a person who believed in absolute truth, path of ahimsa, you can see Gandhi came up with a quote like this: where there is only a choice between cowardice and violence, I would advise violence. Same you can see during the time of Quit India movement. The same Gandhi we propound as a major force of non-violence, who have lived his life with the morality of non-violence. He give a quotation or quote like do or die. Do or die is interpreted by some people as a call for violence, and that is one reason why Quit India movement was the most violent mass movement in the freedom struggle. So Gandhi, even though he is more of an absolutist leader, absolutist ethical philosopher, but during circumstances he showed the flexibility to change his stances. For him, he always made a reference, he is not an ethical philosopher, he is just a social human being, and whatever this point of view he takes, that is based on social XYZ circumstances. It is not the whatever he said earlier or whatever is the political or ethical ideology, staying with this ethical ideology is not the objective basis for any decision. Objective basis for any decision is social aspects or economic aspects or political aspects, or what is the situational requirement. That is the basis for any decision, not adhering to whatever the principles that has been propounded earlier. So Gandhian ethics, where you categorize is, it is more in the sides of an absolutist ethics, but if you look at the life history of Gandhi, there are elements of relativism in it. It is not a rigid school of thought. There is enough element of relativism where he shown the ability to connect with differences, address the differences in his own school of thought or his own way of thinking. On that note, let's move ahead. Now we can analyze what is this, how is this being taught in different Western school of thoughts. Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. What exactly this means? Immanuel Kant stood for, there are certain categorical imperative values. There are certain morality called categorical imperatives that is same throughout the religion, throughout the cultures, throughout the history. So he is Immanuel Kant, he is a guy who stood for absolutist school of thought or absolutist ethics. Similarly, you can see with John Stuart Mills. John Stuart Mills, he is the famous guy who came up with the theory of utilitarianism. What does the theory of utilitarianism means? That any action is a right action if it gives greatest pleasure to greatest number of people. So how much pleasure it brings to the world, how much happiness an action brings into the world, that is the basis for measuring an act as ethical or non-ethical. Now what is he relativistic or is he absolutist? This question can be answered because he came up with the objective that any measure or any consequence of an action, you are getting clearing the exam, you will feel pleasure. You are not clearing the exam, you will feel pain. You are get hit by a vehicle, you will feel pain. So everything what you see, this pain, pleasure, everything, despite being very subjective with different individuals, he believes that everything of this pain and pleasure can be objectively categorized, can be objectively quantified in analyzing ethicality and non-ethicality of a decision. So that is what utilitarianism bring into picture. And utilitarianism is a highly, even though there are signs of absolutism, but it upholds, even though it is more of a relativistic school of thought, but there is an objective absolutism into it. What irrespective of the circumstances, there what kind of pleasure and pain it can be quantified. Similarly, Ruth Benedict, in her book Patterns of Culture, very interesting book. In this book, she stands that no universal standard to morality. She is somebody who is great propounder of relativistic school of thought. She says that, she argues with different examples that there is no such as one single truth or one single morality that can transcend ages or that can transcend different cultures. What is morality in India is not morality even in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. Forget about the Western countries. So she was one of the great propounder of relativistic school of thought. So when you are writing some answers, all these thinkers and different thoughts should come into your mind and it should reflect in your paper. That's where your arguments, your substantiation will make a difference compared to others' papers. I hope I'm making the arguments clear here. Now on this regard, answer this question first. What does this quote mean to you? That is the question. Ethics is not a set of rules that can be applied universally. It is a complex and evolving system that must be adapted to each individual, each society, and each historical era. I hope you have done the exercise. If you're watching video, pause and do the exercise. So we are not answering, discussing the complete answer. What are your arguments will you make? So it is saying that ethics is not a set of rules that can be applied universally. So first argument is in line with the quotation. That is, ethics is relativistic. You put some religious thoughts, you put some scholars, you put some examples in your life, you put some examples within India. Like earlier we have this LGBTQ rights were not upheld in India, but today we can see this after Navtej Singh Johar case, we have this LGBTQ rights upheld in the country. Similarly, debates is going on same-sex marriage, which was unethical in previous era, but now there is more acceptance giving to differences in gender identities. Similarly, you give so many examples from personal life, from administration, from applied. That is, ethics is a relativistic science. You bring different scholars, you bring Gandhi arguments by Gandhi, everything into it. Now the second part is, this is the positive part, that is in line with the statement. Second part is, ethics is not always relativistic. What are the arguments by Immanuel Kant to say that ethics is not always relativistic? Ethics is absolutist. What is the arguments that religions propounds? Are there certain values, certain principles that is upheld in every religion? Like Gandhi says, truth is the essence of all religions. Is truth having a universal characteristics? Are different cultures, so many things are changing, but still are there some values that is always being upheld? Are some values that are most critical for existence of human beings or existence of civilizations? All these arguments you ponder under this. That is the negative argument. That is, ethics is not relativistic. There is some absolutist element also within ethics. Now you try to negotiate a middle stance. That is, if you took at the whole arguments of ethics, all the peripheral of ethics, there is a core area and there is a peripheral area. Core principles, you can see it more of a continuity. You speak about the continuation of Indian civilization. Speak about continuity and change. So core elements are the principles that you can see as continuously flowing throughout civilizations, throughout countries, throughout societies. For example, the most fundamental values like telling lies, not telling lies, being honest, being loyal, taking care of family, all these basic fundamental values, integrity in work, all these basic most fundamental values, these are core aspects which you can see in most of the countries. But the peripheral aspects keeps on changing. Like when COVID pandemic came, the nature of works keep on changing. Like people were going to office, now people are working from home, people are working from outstations. All this nature of how people do work changed. But what work people are doing, that is mostly in the same peripheral. That is mostly not changed. Similarly, you can cite the constitutional values. We have hundreds of constitutional amendments. And through these constitutional amendments, we can see Indian constitution underwent so much changes throughout the last 50 years. Still, there are some core aspects of Indian constitution, like fundamental principles, that the values, the constitutionalism values, constitutional morality, that the constitution stands for. All these values are unaltered, even having hundreds of amendments. So these values remains core. So you can argue that even though ethics is relativistic, there are some elements of continuity, some element of absolutism that is fundamental to human life, to human civilizations. On that note, you can write a conclusion and finish the answers. I hope you are at least making 3 major dimensions, 5 points, 3 points, then a conclusion citing some of the recent current happenings. This much, and what ethics is definition you can write, or in ethics in introduction also you can cite some examples of current affairs or current happenings. I hope you are doing it this way. Yeah, next we will be discussing different branches of ethics. 3 major branches we will be seeing. First one is the meta ethics. Second one is normative ethics. And the third one, applied ethics. Now let's understand each one of these in details. These are categorization of ethics depending on what exactly the field of science or branch of ethics is seeking to answer. What kind of question it is being asked. Depending on this, we have different schools of thought. Yeah, let's move ahead. The first one, meta-ethics. What exactly is meta-ethics? Meta-ethics is a branch of ethics that focuses on the nature of ethical thought. So here what is important is answering the question like what does goodness means or what does badness means. Suppose I am saying you this XYZ act is good or this XYZ act is bad. Irrespective of what action you take, what exactly does this good means or what exactly does this right means? Does really right means right to myself or right means right to whole society? What exactly is the meaning of right or meaning of wrong, meaning of just or meaning of unjust? What exactly this is? If in more individualistic perspective, it seeks what is the ultimate goal of life. You can relate so much of thinkers, so much of historical figures you have read in history into this. One of the most interesting aspect is the Indian school of thought, that is Shankaracharya. What exactly Shankaracharya brought into picture? All these Shankaracharya, Ramanuja and Madhavacharya, all these people have brought different ways of thinking, different ways of expressing reality or different ways of expressing righteousness according to them into the Indian thought process or Indian school of thought. For Shankaracharya, the most important thing is he propounded the ideology of Advaita Vedanta. He says the individualistic identity as well as the Atman, both are none but the same. And we can acquire, there is no qualitative difference between Atman and individual identity. That is the idea propounded by Advaita Vedanta, propounded by Shankaracharya. And your whatever act you should be doing is based on this understanding. Similarly, Ramanuja brought into picture the idea concept of Vishishtadvaita. There is some qualities, Vishisht qualities that qualifies the Atman as there are some virtues, some special values that is associated with Atman that is not, may or may not be with the individualistic identity. Now, what if you want to achieve moksha or if you want to achieve the ultimatum of life, your individualistic values or individualistic aspiration should be in line with what is the Vishishta concepts that is being discussed. It should be in line. When these both are in line, you have harmony in life, or you have, your life is in the righteousness path. That is the ideology propounded by Ramanuja. Bhakti is the path of Vishishtadvaita. Similarly, we have Madhavacharya's Dvaita Vedanta. It speaks about stark differentiation between Atman and individualistic identity. You are two different entities. You can align yourself with Atman, with qualities of Atman. That's how you acquire moksha or acquire enlightenment. That is the ideology propounded by Madhavacharya's Dvaita Vedanta. All these different schools of thought bring into picture different levels of thinking, different levels of defining what is right or what exactly constitutes wrong, or what is just, what unjust, what exactly meta-ethics is looking into for. This Vedantic thinkers has brought into picture under the Indian school of thought. Let's try to understand meta-ethics from more contemporary perspectives. I think you have, some of you might have read this famous book, or there is a movie also on the same name, The White Tiger. So in The White Tiger, it is written by the author Aravind Adiga. What is the ethical question the book raises? The protagonist, that is the Balram. What the Balram does is, Balram is born in a stark poverty situation. What he sees in his growing periods is poverty, abject poverty, exploitation, corruption, and like poor people are treated like slaves by the rich people. Now he is being in this kind of a condition. He got an opportunity. He got an opportunity to do something ethical and come unethical and come out of this situation. Now what is the right thing to do? Or what exactly constitute right for Balram? For Balram, the right thing was to come out of the poverty. Living in the poverty is not the right thing for him. So he done whatever it was necessary to do there. He took the unethical path and came out of his what he thought he shouldn't be there. He shouldn't be in the state of poverty or abject poverty or social discrimination. Now this may be against the social psyche. This may be against the ethicality of society. He has done something that is illegal also. He has become an exploiter after doing this. So what exactly is the right thing? Is continuing in the poverty in the name of ethical act, is it the right thing? Or coming out of poverty, irrespective of even if he has to commit something unethical, is that the right thing? So these kind of questions are being propounded by the book White Tiger. It really shook the ethical thinking of your mind if you really devote into it. Let's move ahead. See one more book, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. This is a book more on the lines of an emotional construct, where the other book was questioning the common psyche of or common ethics of Indian society by showing the reality of poverty, exploitedness, and all this. This is more of a personal inquisite. This book looks into the novel depicts a tragic consequence what follows a forbidden love. A mother of two girls is get fallen into love with a man from lower caste. Now that creates so much of societal conflict, so much of societal problems that end in a tragic way. Now, what is more important? Is upholding individualistic identity more important, or is living in line with societal norms or societal values more important? So the protagonist in the movie is facing an identity crisis. So this is being explored here. This raises the ethical question about treatment of, similarly, the caste system, the marginalized groups, the lower caste, the women. All these people are considered as discriminated within the normal societal hierarchy. So this question has been raised in this book, The God of Small Things. So when you are writing the answer, when you are substantiating some arguments, the arguments propounded by the book, the protagonist is facing the identity crisis, whether you should do individual versus societal crisis. Wherever you are making these arguments, this book should come into your mind. Then only you can write it in the paper. Similarly, whenever there is a question of what is right, what is wrong, when that kind of answer is there, you should write about white tiger, write in one line about white tiger and the protagonist approach to it. Let's move ahead. Now let's understand what exactly is normative ethics. So in meta ethics, so far we have been discussing what is good, what is wrong. That is the inquiry. Here it is more of a prescriptive ethics. Here normative ethics answers question like what actions or behaviors are morally right or wrong. What principles or values should guide moral decision making. These kind of questions are being debated here. You can see the Bhagavad Gita. The whole Bhagavad Gita, construct of Bhagavad Gita is nothing but giving advice to Arjuna what he should be doing. So these kind of construct, these kind of thinking, finding answers to what is exactly a right action to take, what is exactly a not right, wrong action to take. This is being the question that is answered in Normative Ethics. Very famous book, Normative Ethics by Shelley Kagan. She makes some compelling arguments. Kagan argues that normative ethics provides guidance for how we should live and act. Exactly. That is the major purpose of normative ethics. Moral reasons are building blocks of moral rules. Like how normative ethics build its construct is through moral reasons. And through these moral reasons, it makes moral rules which should decide the XYZ situation. Moral rules decide what is right and what is wrong. And moral rules are based on moral reasons. Moral reasons can be grounded in interest of individuals. Within the normative ethics, there can be different schools of thought. Like interest of individuals is given primary importance, or intrinsic value of things, or demands of rationality. So different school of thoughts is itself there within the normative ethics also. Let's move ahead. You can relate some of the movies with these normative ethics principles. Like 3 Idiots, there is the interesting character played by Madhavan. He is facing some dilemma within the movie. Throughout the movie, you can see he has a passion of photography. He wants to go do that. At the same time, there is so much of societal pressure, parental pressure, family pressure on him to pursue engineering. So what exactly is the right thing for him to do? The character played by Amir Khan somehow convinced him the right thing to do is to pursue your passion, to step against your parents and speak openly in front of them. So that is the right thing to do. That debate is there within the movie. It's a very normal movie, but can you bring this essence or ethical essence of this movie into your answer writing? Similarly, this can also be cited over the meaning of education. Some XYZ questions with education. What exactly is education? Is education making Rancho's character? You can cite. Is education all about making degrees? Or it is about applying knowledge for common good? What exactly is the purpose of education? Similarly, the movie, very famous movie, Swadesh, the guy who returned from USA, who went into the village and he got a realization what he should be doing. He should not be, and he never returned back afterwards. What should be his calling, whether it is to working, making rockets in NASA or making a XYZ engineering works for the village which he visited in India. So what should be his priorities got totally changed after he visiting the condition. So these kind of movies you can cite where there is a conflict between what you should be doing on different circumstances or what values you should be prioritizing. So can these movies, you list down more kind of movies or more kind of ethical debates from these movies under different syllabus heads. It should be this much fluent that under each head you should be having at least one movie, one book, one novel example, one novel argument, one very novel substantiation that only your copy will be having. Try to inculcate this habit. Whichever magazine you are running through, you find some ethical arguments into it and add into your workbooks. This should be your approach throughout. Now let's come to applied ethics. Applied ethics is nothing like in meta ethics what we have been looking at. In meta ethics we have been looking at what exactly constitutes good and what exactly constitutes good, wrong. In normative ethics, on the other hand, we have been looking, is it right to do or is it not right to do? In applied ethics, we are applying the concepts which have been developed through meta ethics or through normative ethics into different aspects of life. Different aspects of life can be economy or army or military or healthcare or public policy, international relations, any walks of life. If you apply the principles of ethics, then that field of science or that field of ethics, we call it as applied ethics. And one of the most profound interesting cases, case of Amartya Sen. His famous work is Capability Approach to Development. Individual well-being and social welfare evaluated based on personal freedom agency. And what is he saying? He's saying that creating wealth or GDP growth or GDP numbers, these are not exactly the measures of development. What exactly is the measure of development? That is personal freedom and agency. You can measure development of a nation by how much personal freedom and agency it has to its communities, it has to its citizens. Goal of development is not making money or not increasing the wealth, but expanding people's opportunities and developments. And what does this capabilities means? How you can increase this personal freedom and agency? That is by increasing the people's ability to access health care, access education, political participation, do meaningful work, have close relationship, enjoy sense of autonomy and self-respect. If people have more acceptance to this or ability access to this, then we say that people have become more capable. Then we see that the country has become more developed. Those countries which have more capable people, they have more choices, more opportunities and more agency and autonomy. These are the countries we should call as developed countries and not those countries which have so much of money. Now where you get a practical example of this, some of the Gulf countries which doesn't have democratic values, which doesn't have freedom of speech, which doesn't have a free media, but these countries are very rich due to their mineral resources, you can say petroleum resources or other resources they are having. They're extremely rich in terms of per capita GDP. But these are very poor in case of capabilities it gives to its citizens. Similarly, you can call with the example of China. China has been in forefront of giving development to its citizens. China has quite tremendous growth in last 30 years. But on the other hand, China is restrictive in case of giving freedom or autonomy to its citizens. Let's move ahead. You can cite the case of Ashish Nandy. He is one of the, like throughout the in newspapers or the general ethics we read today is more and more moving towards Western ethics. What does it mean? We are more and more moving towards individualistic ethics. Focus is more on individual freedom. Focus is more on respecting individuality. You can see this in LGBTQ cases. You can see this in other cases also. But Ashish Nandy is one of the scholars who go against this. He says that individualistic approach to ethics overlooks the importance of culture, tradition, community in shaping ethical values and practices. Here he is critical of Western approach of individualistic and rights-based approach to ethics. He is propounding collective values. Collective means collective approaches should be given priority beyond these individual values. So this is the argument propounded by Ashish Nandy. Similarly, you can think about Rabindranath Tagore. He was one of the greatest ethical scholars of freedom fighters. Now he has an idea of commonhood of universalism. His idea of universalism is sometimes perceived as against the nationalistic identities. His universalism idea transcends nationality, transcends patriotism, and other XYZ differentiation between cultures, societies, and people. One of the most interesting part is he believed that art is a universal language. Art is a universal language through which you can communicate to any citizen, any XYZ person in any culture. So his ideology is to nationhood, his ideology is to country, nation, all this is slightly differently oriented from other freedom fighters we look at. So it's very important to study or cite the examples of Rabindranath Tagore in similar cases. Let's move ahead. So far we have discussed different types of ethics depending on what you are trying to answer. Like the meta ethics, we have the normative ethics, applied ethics, different across different dimensions. We have seen what are the perspective, opinions, arguments of different scholars on each of these. Now let's try to understand what does ethics seeks to promote in human life. This has been a repeated questions in UPSC 2022 recent paper as well as in 2014. One way or the other these questions have been asked. Just take 2 minutes and try to answer these questions. At least this list down what are the dimensions you're going to think on this question. You can pause the video and complete the exercise. So what I'm pretty sure is this is such a straightforward, simple question. What does ethics seek to promote in human life? And almost all of you have listed 5, 6, 7, 8 different dimensions of this. What ethics is going to do in human life? And it is asked as human life. Human life you can interpret in n number of different ways. Now what I'm going to give you in this answer is not n different arguments, but a framework or perspective you have to think and apply not just this question but lot many questions throughout ethics. That's what is the only takeaway from this. Let's see what it is. So when a question comes on this regard, what are the ethics seek to promote in human life? That's such a broad question. Your perspective or your thinking or generating points should revolve around 3 dimensions basically. First one is the personal life, personal ethics. What does ethics seeks to promote in personal life? And then think on administration. What does ethics seeks to promote in administration? Now think on applied ethics. What does ethics to promote to seek in different aspects of life like army, military, healthcare, etc. etc. So these are the fundamental thinking aspects: personal life, administration, and applied ethics. Now this is not enough. It is very easy to categorize into 3. But what exactly to think in personal life? What exactly to think in personal life? You should have a fair understanding of ethics in private life and ethics in public life. The major difference between ethics in private life and ethics in public life is what values we are seeking in private life and public life are quite different. In private life, what we want is love, what we want is emotional support, what we want is higher level of privacy, higher respect for individuality, All these are what the values we seek in our private life. On the other hand, in public life, what we seek is meritocracy, or not being interfered, or higher level of privacy protection laws, non-interference by XYZ, responsibility and accountability. These are the values we seek in public life. That's why what we approach to ethics, or what ethics leads you to define in public and private life, has its own differences and variations. In private life also, you can think on these dimensions. What ethics seeks to in personal life, you divide it into two categories: private life and public life. In private, you have to think on these dimensions. What does ethics seeks to promote in one's relation with oneself? It is those people who are ethical, who are engaged in self-care. There is a mental health issue, they seek professional help. They are engaged in quitting bad habits like smoking, or they know how to take care of their mental and physical well-being. This is why ethics in private life plays a role in one's relation with oneself. Similarly, parent-children relation, we'll see and discuss in the upcoming slides. Similarly, one's relation with spouse. Ethics upholds essential values of a good relationship or a long-lasting relationship, like honesty, mutual respect, accountability, loyalty. All these values are quite important to have a positive relationship. This has been upheld by ethics. That's what ethics seeks to promote in one's relation with spouse. Similarly, think on lines of friends. Now it comes to public relations. Think on these aspects: workplace ethics, ethics in relation with colleagues, subordinates, ethics in relation with policies, ethics in relation with the media, all these aspects. So this is how you should think on life, on lines of personal life. Now comes to administration. Now you have to get examples, you have to generate dimensions from what ethics seeks to promote in administration. Now how to think here? So many questions you have to solve by thinking yourself as an administrator or thinking yourself as a civil servant. So in this kind of question, try to visualize what are the responsibilities of a civil servant. What all are the responsibilities? In all these, in fulfilling each and every of these, one of these responsibilities, ethics does plays a critical role. That's how you are going to answer this question. The first major responsibility, legal responsibility. What does that mean? Legal responsibilities. One of the most important fundamental thing of a civil servant, value of a civil servant should be respect to rule of law. And he should adhere to whatever the laws, rules and regulations says. Quite very important. What ethics does here? Ethics does here in understanding the true purpose of laws. If an implementation of law comes, it is not just enough. A law should not be implemented in just letter. A law should be implemented in letter and spirit. Law should be implemented with human values. If it is doing injustice to one of the poorest of poor person, then the effort should be done to revamp the way of application of the laws. Or wherever the legal civil servant has discretionary powers, he should exhibit or use the laws in such a way that it is ethically more right way to use, or it benefits the poorest of poor, the better. Similarly, the policy responsibilities. Policy responsibilities, when thinking, you can again divide into two. In case of policy formulation, in case of policy implementation. Best example is, you should, whatever action you take, first thing you should come to your mind is how it is going to affect the poorest of poor in the society. Go ahead, public service delivery. Public service delivery, again, which areas should be prioritized? If there is many times happened, there is delay in public service deliveries. So which areas to prioritize? What should be the legal discretionary aspect, discretionary regulations, how it should be interpreted? In resource management, there is always crunch of resources. So which department should get more resources? Is food subsidy more important or military spending more important? So ethics should guide the civil servant's decision making in all these aspects. Similarly, conflict resolution. Civil servant is also a head of the office. he will have a number of subordinates under him, and there is always a chance going some or other conflict going on in the office. And it is the responsibility of the civil servant to ensure that whatever the conflict happen, whatever difference of opinion happen, it doesn't impact the efficiency or efficacy of the office. So this is also comes the responsibility of civil servant. What ethics does here? Ethics increases the persuasion, social influence of the civil servant. Ethics give a certain kind of respect to the XYZ civil servant, which goes beyond respect for superior officer. Leadership qualities. Ethics seeks to promote right values. Ethics seeks to promote public sacrifice or public upholding demands of public in civil services. So all these aspects you can see that these are the responsibilities of the civil servant. You have to by heart these, and you have to apply. This is n number of questions we will see throughout the class. Many PYQs. You simply have to apply this framework and generate points. In applied, you can think on different relations. Like in business, what ethics seeks to promote, like the business done by Tata Group. Why Tata Group is such a respected group? Because they follow ethical business practices. That is why after decades, they still manage their business. They have long-term relationship with their customers. Similarly, what is the role of ethics in international relations? In ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis, what is the role of ethics in India's decisions in this? All this you can study on this regard. More role of ethics in economy, role of ethics in other aspects of life like disaster management, or syllabus wise you can think of syllabus wise history, interpretation of history, so much events that is ongoing you can think of as an examples of applied ethics. So this is the framework is what I want to convey to you. You have to be very clear of this framework, think on these dimensions. It becomes very cakewalk to generate 10 points, 12 points under one head, and you will have enough diversity within your thoughts, within your arguments and substantiation, rather than simply starting the answer without having a framework in mind. On that note, let's move ahead. So we have been discussing too much on ethics. What constitute right, what constitute wrong, what ethics tries to do in our life, what exactly is different branches of ethics. Now let's try to discuss something on what decides how we make our decisions. Whatever the ethics is or ethics is not, if you really look at human actions or human developments or human lifestyle or life path, everything boils down to one point, that is decision making. Decision making is influenced or decision making is corrected, then everything that ethical issues we see in the society, be it corruption, be it violence against women, be it any other social issues you say, you can have a greater approach to solving the issue. So how to influence decision making of humans or any person? So there are three major heads you have to think. That is three major influences the decision making of a person. The first one is personal values and beliefs. Many of the decisions we take are based on personal values and beliefs. For example, tell me, at least some of you or many of you have at least done something volunteering in life, something done for social service in life. And what exactly you have done? Why exactly you have done this? You have done some level of charity at some point of your life. Why exactly you have done this? Because you believe in some kind of values. You believe in a society which gives equal responsibility to all. You believe in fairness. You believe in these principles. That's why you do the XYZ deeds. Similarly, some activities we doesn't do. Sometimes if police caught you for not putting helmet, you refuse to bribe the policeman. You paid the full fine. Why have you done this? Because you believe in rule of law. You believe in the ethics of rule of law. So many day-to-day activities, many of our decisions are guided by values and beliefs we believe in. Second major aspect that influences our decisions is goals and priorities. And what does goals and priorities means? We have seen so much of conflicts going on regarding work-life balance. What exactly is the issue? Somebody who is totally all priorities is work, then he is going to have work-life issue in life. So similarly, what is your priorities? Your decision to stay longer in the office, that is because you prioritize work. Your goal is to achieve XYZ in your work. That is your goal. You may be working too much. That is why you are working more and you will have the disbalance in work-life balance. Similarly, you can see in case of sportsmen, professionals, their primary goal is to achieve excellence in whatever sport they are playing. Say, take the example of Virat Kohli. He has quit eating the junk food. He has quit eating the food which he like. Why he has done that? Because he has to excel in his sports, and to reach that goal, he need to make some self-sacrifices. You can think on different dimensions. Why you have joined for UPSC coaching? Some of you might want you to make money. You want to have a security of a government job. That is a materialistic aspects have decided your decisions. Some of you have altruistic perspective. Some of you have done the decision because you want to serve the nation, you want to serve the society, or some XYZ reasons, other reasons. So whatever be the reason, what is your goal you want to achieve in your, what are your priorities in life? This is also obviously going to impact what decisions you are going to take. Similarly, a third major case is the environmental factors or circumstantial factors. Many of the times, despite what we believe and what our priorities are, we tend to fall into the pressure or situational incidences. One of the best examples is COVID-19 came. So much of our priorities changed, so much of our values changed due to what the pandemic turbulence has created. Let's move ahead. We want to ponder a little bit on values. What exactly is values? Technical definition is values are principles or standards that we hold important and guide our behavior and decision making, as strictly as we have discussed before. Values, if I believe honesty is very important, then honesty is a value. Otherwise, honesty is just a characteristics, or integrity is just a characteristics. But when I value, when I consider integrity is much important characteristics, then it becomes a value. Values are principles or standards that we hold to be important, and its purpose is guide our behavior and decision making. But it's not always that straightforward. We have already discussed that value does influences decision making, but at times different values comes in conflict. Now in that time you have to take a choice out of what is the most preferable value for you in that XYZ situation. Some very interesting example. Consider the example. Your close friend has done something wrong and you are asked to keep it a secret. Suppose he has done XYZ corruption in his government office at a very large scale. And you are also working in a government office and you came to know about this corruption. Now, what you should be doing here? You are facing a situation of value crisis. What is the value conflict you are facing? First one is the loyalty towards friend versus what is the value crisis you are facing versus rule of law or versus justice. Can be justice also if corruption is the matter. So different conflicts you are facing. Now consider this example. Volkswagen emission scandal. Volkswagen has installed software in its diesel vehicles that allowed them to cheat on emission test. So it will give a inaccurate data that in line with the rules and regulations set by the regulatory bodies. So what is the conflict here? What the Volkswagen was trying to achieve? They were trying to increase their profitability. They were trying to increase their profitability compared to environmental values or professional integrity values. They are one way or the other cheating the customers. They are one way or the other cheating the regulatory bodies. So there is a conflict between profiteering or profitability versus environmental values and professional integrity. Now you can see so much of similar example like the Satyam scandal, Satyam computer scandal. What exactly Satyam computer scandal is? The accounts has been manipulated and higher profits has been shown to increase the confidence, investor confidence in the company. So here also the profiteering motive is overpowering other motives, other real responsibilities, legal values, or accountability, responsibility, values. All these are overpowered by the need for money or profiteering motive. You can see the same case with the Harshal Mehta scandal, stock market scandal. You can scheme and relate this with the accusations against the Adani group by the Hindenburg. So many accusations you find very similar type of conflict being repeated throughout the nature. So what is the major conflict here? Which values, when a decision has to be made, either you have to give preference to rule of law, you have to give preference to rules and regulation, you have to preference to give justice. But if you keep profiteering money over all these other values, then you are going into such kind of scandals or very dangerous situations. So in this case of value conflict also, it is what value you really truly believe in or you truly stands for, that is going to guide your decision making. So much examples you can see: violence against women, stringent laws versus value shift. Like we have so many laws in support of women. There is nothing a situation like laws is not the problem. But still we hear that when something is happening, when some grave cases of violence against women has been reported, there is stringent call from various political and other stakeholders to increase the intensity of punishment. Now why this is coming? Because this is like a aftermath decision. Once the crime has happened, then you are trying to take the corrective measures. But the real solution will not happen here. Real solution, even after making stringent laws, it is not the permanent solution to the problem. Permanent solution to have a value shift. You can't have a value shift by making one step. It requires a comprehensive approach. One of the best value shift example is Japan's inclusive movement. This movement has increased the women participation in Japanese workforce, increased the autonomy, increased the decision-making power of women in Japanese lifestyle. So this happened in decades. This happened by a conscious effort has been put by every organization, every institution in the country. So this takes huge time. This takes huge efforts to be put in this direction. Then only we can expect the generation to have a value shift. So our politicians, be it any XYZ leaders, it's very difficult to implement this. So we go for shortcuts like making the laws more and more stringent. Here what you should know is it is not the stringency of law that decides the effectiveness. It is its implementation efficiency that decides its effectiveness. Very stringent is law, but implementation is lagging, like cases are being pending for 10 years or decades, then it is never going to act as a deterrence force. Now consider the example of corruption. Again, here also you can take legal measures against corruption. You can make more laws more stringent, but at the end of the day, it is only having a change in value shift in society as well as the civil servants that only put an end to corruption. In the political class, in all spectrum, we need a change in value. Politicization of caste, politicization of religion, all this is coming from a value system that is not democratic, that is not secular, that believes in segmented societies' interest. So these are different aspects you should ponder upon. You should ponder different dimensions, different examples, collect under each of these heads. Let's move ahead. So now let's understand how values are being formed. We will understand three different cases: the role of family, role of school, and role of society. So here also what I really want to convey you is not so many examples or not so many content, but the framework. What should be your framework of thought? That is the key point here. You should be thinking under 4 or 5 standard dimensions, like role of family, role of society, role of parents, role of school teacher, anyone, any institution, role is being asked. You have to think on influencing the characters or influencing the values of a person. You should think on these dimensions. That is modeling. That is how a new character is being trained into the XYZ person. How a new values is being conveyed into the XYZ person, given, installed, or given into the XYZ person. Similarly, reinforcement. That is how you are training the system or training the person to uphold XYZ value system that has been conveyed to him. Similarly, communication. What kind of opinion building, what kind of critical thinking happens on XYZ ideas that is being conveyed. Then reflection and exposure, whether these ideas has been practiced, whether the challenges that is exposed when practicing has been discussed or debated. Then some external factors that totally depend on. So role of family, role of anything on characters or influencing values of a person, you should think on these 5 dimensions. Now modeling, role of family in forming values of a person. Children adopt values that are consistently demonstrated within family environment. Family is the first place of socialization for children. Whatever the family is doing, children is most likely to copy that. Petty corruptions in front of children. If father is doing petty corruptions in front of children, most likely children will develop a negative approach or negative attitude towards corruption. This may lead to greater corruption when the children grow up and they had XYZ opportunities. Similarly, domestic violence in family. This will give totally distorted gender opinion, gender attitudes towards in the children. Role of very famous example of Gandhi, where he appraised the role of his mother in developing his ethical identities. And it is these ethical identities, these ethical values that guided all the decisions Gandhi have made it. Similarly, reinforcement. Families can reinforce value by encouraging and rewarding behavior that reflects those values. That means if something, children are most likely to do, say lies, children are most likely to do some small level of stealing, it is the responsibility of families to correct it. If children are doing something wrong, it is the responsibility of children's parents or family to give punishment, give disciplinary actions, discourage the XYZ actions. And if children is coming doing something great, if he has shared his food, shared his canteens with XYZ friends, then there should be some appreciation given. There should be some positive aspects given to it. Otherwise, it can lead to a case of broken window theory. Either you stop it today, otherwise it will lead to complete collapse of individual or person. Communication, passing on values through conversation, storytelling, etc. Whatever real life XYZ experiences you have in the family is very limited. So you have to convey different values through how you communicate with the XYZ children. Best example is speaking of or telling about Panchatantra stories, speaking about various religious stories, cultural stories, nationalist stories, patriotic stories. Conveying these stories to children plays a very major role in forming the value system of the children. Reflection and exposure. They also should be given training or given exposure to check their values. Their values should be critically questioned at times. Self-reflection based on new values and practices. Like we have observed that children who go to school, they learn something other form. Like if there is a gender-based discrimination in division of labor in home, and children come to home after school, they started questioning why women are or why women at home is discriminated in XYZ arena. So all this we see because of the reflection and exposure on different value systems. Similarly, external factors, of course, traditional culture, you can relate it with vegetarianism. Most of the vegetarian attitude in especially in North India is built because of the religious beliefs, built because of the cultural beliefs in XYZ. Let's move ahead. Similarly, consider the case of role of school. You have to think on similar lines in modeling, in reinforcement, in communication, in reflection and exposure and external factors. School is much broader area of socialization after family. Now what happens in school, you learn different kinds of students from different walks of life will come into a single class. So it's an opportunity for children to learn the democratic skills, democratic values through interaction with XYZ peers. Curriculum content also give ethical values to it, like teaching again Panchatantra stories, epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata or Quran, etc. Extracurricular activities, opportunity to learn teamwork, leadership, of course, a reinforcement role of teachers in same what parents' role is, importance of disciplinary policies, importance of appreciating honesty or true values they have exhibited by children, importance of communication, participation in civic engagement projects, reflection exposure. For example, one of the best examples is in Japan. Children are asked to clean toilets in schools. It is the responsibility of children in one day to clean the toilet. That gives you sense of there is no special workers who do this. It is their own part of living and part of responsibility of doing this. But we don't have such a culture. External factors encourage critical thinking. Children talking against bias at home. We already discussed this. So those, what the takeaway is, you have to think on these dimensions. How modeling is happening at school, how reinforcement is happening at school, how communication, how reflection and exposure, how external factors are influencing XYZ values formed at school. Same exercise you have to do for role of society. Cultural, respecting elders, hospitality, compassion towards animals, all these you learn from XYZ cultural beliefs, cultural system, way of living, all these are learned from these. Religious teaching, concept of dharma is being taught in Hinduism. It impacts the value system of children. Similar system goes with reinforcement, social norms like arranged marriage and endogamy. This has been given appreciated throughout in the cultures, and people tend to believe that this is the only right thing to do. Even though urban cultures are changing, you can see so much of positiveness. Even after education, people tend to believe arranged marriages are the only right thing to do. So legal system, delay of cases, you can see reinforcement opportunities through giving XYZ punishment or deterrence of punishment is being negated due to consistent delay in cases. Communication, we have role models like APJ Abdul Kalam. You can relate with the famous movie I Am Kalam. So cite something from the movies you read, cite something from the novels you read. APJ Abdul Kalam inspiring generations of children even today to dream. Reflection and exposure, modern versus traditional value conflict. We see this in so many walks of life, in our dress choices, in our food choices, in our partner choices. Everywhere we see in modern times there is a conflict going on between traditional and modern values. In westernization is also impacting a shift in the value system. For example, it has given the more individualistic based approach, rights based approach. It has made society more egalitarian. At the same time, the negative effects like consumerism is going on. So that is how different values is formed. Whichever aspects question has come, like instead of society, anything is come, think on these lines, think on modeling, reinforcement, communication, reflection and exposure and external factors. So very fast answer this question. What exactly the question is saying? If a country is to be corruption free and become a nation of beautiful minds, I strongly feel there are three key societal members who can make a difference. They are father, mother and the teacher, APJ Abdul Kalam. Very straightforward, easy question, consistently asked by UPSC. What do you have to do? Whatever we have discussed so far. What is the role of mother? What is the role of father? What is the role of teachers in inculcating right values in students? That you have to write here. You can think on more lines of modeling, reinforcement. You may or may not give the exact word like modeling, but you can think, arrange your thinking on these lines. And you can give a counter perspective to this. What will be the counter perspective? That is not just father, mother and teachers. There are other factors also determine the cultural factors, religious factors, so many other factors that also determines the success or non-success of a nation. Okay, on that regard, we will not spend too much time here. Let's move ahead. Now we can try to understand ethics by comparing and contrasting it with three different aspects. First one is the ethics and morality. Second one is ethics and law, and third one is ethics and religion. Here you can see there are different approaches to it. Here you can study the subject like this also, like learn the basic concepts of what is ethics and what is morality. Then you can categorize the subject into aspect like ethical subjects, ethical but not moral subjects, then unethical but moral subjects, ethical and moral subjects, and unethical and not moral subjects. So you can categorize under different heads, and you can ponder what are the examples, what are the arguments you can make on this regard. So this is one approach of learning this. From the next topics, we will see how different other approaches are being implemented. So here you can see what exactly is ethics. We have been discussing it extensively in the class. Ethics is nothing but an external standards, societal standards to understand what is right or what is wrong, and it gives an objective framework to guide the behavior. It is more oriented towards absolutism. Ethics, privacy of digital content is wrong. That is what ethics says. Now from morality perspective, morality and ethics, the major difference is when ethics is talking about at a societal perspective, morality is more about individualistic. Individual subjective sense of what is right and what is wrong. We have said that ethics say that privacy of downloading pirated movies is wrong. That's what ethics is. But morality says that I don't have money to take subscription of Netflix or XYZ. So it is okay for me to download movie from Telegram or any other XYZ pirated sites. So that is my morality. So morality and ethics, you find the difference. Ethics says it is concerned more about the values, the framework. Why morality is more about how an individual perceives what is right and what is wrong. It is more about relativistic. You can see morality is a much greater, broader spectrum where there is much differences in what one think is right and what one think is not right. Yeah, so that is the basic understanding of difference between ethics and morality. Now considering different examples, ethical but not moral example. Example of a soldier. A soldier may be a moral person. Maybe in his personal capacity, he believes that killing another person is completely wrong. It is unethical as per his mental beliefs. It is unethical aspects, his morality, everything. But since he is a soldier, as a part of his professional responsibility, it is his responsibility to kill the enemy. So it is ethical for him to kill his XYZ enemies, despite even though morally he doesn't agree with whatever killing that is happening. Similarly, violence. Police officer has to do lathi charge in case of controlling a public or controlling a public that is going into violent means. A police officer may be a Gandhian at the moral level. A police officer may believe in ahimsa. But a part of professional responsibility, he has to deliver, he has to do his responsibility. Similarly goes with euthanasia. Euthanasia may go against religious beliefs of some of the religious beliefs of some of the persons. But at times it is also one of the means that is only available instead of extending life with so much of pain. That's why we have passive euthanasia has been legalized to some level in India. Many countries have active as well as passive euthanasia being legalized. Now we explore some of the unethical but moral situations, similar to like breaking traffic rules in case of an emergency of a patient. Here ethics says that it is unethical to break traffic laws, but morality says that we are confronted with a situation where the XYZ emergency of patient, taking him to hospital is the much important priority than respecting the traffic laws. So at this condition we can break the laws or for the time being. Now ethical and moral, like teaching for India initiative, a 2-year initiative where youngsters can go to villages and teach XYZ kids. Similarly, we have not ethical and non-moral like corruption, domestic violence. They are not substantiated on moral basis as well as ethical basis. So this is one approach to study this subject. I hope you have clear with ethics and morality. I hope you can generate a number of arguments on regarding how ethics is influencing morality or how morality is influencing ethics. Clear? Let's move ahead. But these kind of study, compartmentalized study, sometimes not enough. For an organic subject, topics like ethics versus law, you should approach these topics with more organic approach is needed. Now, what ethics? It is an external standard, objective framework to guide behavior, more faced with absolutism. Now, law, what is law? Law is formally recognized context that is enforced by a system of government. What is importance of law is it is enforced. It is forced and binding with external check. If you are not following it, you will be facing punishment, you will be facing consequences. Ethics is not that strict. If you are not following ethics, sometimes you may not get any punishments, you not get any XYZ implications. Does ethics influences law? There are some of the very interesting concepts regarding it. One of the major proponents of ethics and law is John Rawls. John Rawls say that, you might have heard about the John Rawls theory of justice. It is even asked in theory of justice. It is even being asked in UPSC in 2016, I guess. John Rawls theory of justice, it is nothing but justice as fairness. Fairness in all decisions, fairness in conceptualization and implementation of institutions. That is what we call it as justice. Now, what does fairness means? Fairness can be implemented in two ways. One is principle of equal liberties. Principle of equal liberties says that if there is n number of persons, liberties or access to liberties should be arranged in such a way that most disadvantaged person has the highest level of possible access to his liberties. That is, if access to education should be given in arranged education system should be arranged in such a way that even the weakest person or marginalized group should have highest access to education. Similarly, the other one is the difference principle. Difference principle is there is economic differences in the society, there is social differences in the society. When these differences are existing in the society, you have to arrange institution, you have to arrange wealth, you have to arrange other variables in such a way that the maximum benefit is given to the weakest person in the hierarchy. For example, the best example of difference principle is progressive taxation. Progressive taxation. This XYZ principle is called John Rawls theory of justice. This has been asked one time in UPSC. You may expect a direct or indirect question in the upcoming year. So a just society is one in which laws and policies are designed to promote well-being of all citizens, and that ethical principles should play a central role in development of laws and policies. So John Rawls is of the perspective when you are making laws and policies, ethical beliefs or ethical consideration should be centrality to what should be made a law and what should not. Similarly, you can consider Amartya Sen's book, The Idea of Justice. It says that law should be guided by ethical principle of fairness and capability, rather than simply focusing on maximizing utility or efficiency. That means increasing capability is key aspect even in framing laws. It is not just limited to concept of economic development. Amartya Sen's capability approach. You can cite the example of B.R. Ambedkar also. B.R. Ambedkar has famous word in Constituent Assembly that it is not the law that should guide the society, but society that should guide the law. What does he mean by this is, it is a societal ethics that guides the law. It is not the otherwise. A similar statement by him is, even though we have a very good constitution, but good people are needed to carry it forward. Otherwise, whatever the good constitution we have, its benefits will not be carried on into the future. So that is another statement by B.R. Ambedkar. You can consider him. He also believes that ethics is the key factor in deciding what should be laws. Similarly, you can see in many examples, Constitution of India, so many laws are being framed based on ethical consideration. One of the best examples is Article 17 that prohibits untouchability in all its forms. Similarly, Article 14, which gives right to equality to all people. All these are framed based on ethical conceptualization, ethical debates, ethically viewing what is the social reality of India during that time. Similarly, we can see these Navdeep Singh Johar case, where the homosexuality has been decriminalized. So till 2018, our societal ethics was, or at the before decades before that, our societal ethics was against homosexuality. Now we are getting awareness, getting more conceptualization on differences of genders, more acceptance to gender differences of genders than this binary of men and women. So we have this reflection seen in the law also. Now violation of unethical laws by freedom fighters like Mahatma Gandhi, what they were doing, when laws are unethical or laws are unjust, then it is the ethical responsibility of citizen to fight against these laws. Similarly, you can connect with protest against farm laws, protest against any XYZ unjust laws that is being there in the society. If no ethics laws can be misused, like despite having any number of laws. For example, there is stringent laws for women's rights protection, but we have been hearing many cases of dowry prevention law being misused against men. We have heard cases of atrocities against scheduled tribes and scheduled caste act being misused against government officials, sexual harassment charges on false premises charged against men. All these cases are misuse of law. Why this is happening? This is happening because of lack of ethics, because of degeneration of ethics. Similarly, these other side arguments, how does law influences it? This is also very much true. One of the Martha Nussbaum, she has been one of the co-worker of Amartya Sen. They have together conceptualized this capability approach. She has her own contributions on regarding nearby sciences or these developmental sciences or economics. In her book Sex and Social Justice, law has an important role to promote in promoting ethical principles of equality, respect and individual dignity. It is when India given right to vote to every person irrespective of his caste, creed, wealth or position, anything. That is when the idea of democracy started flowing, or the idea of democracy started realizing in Indian society. So it is not just ethics influences law or ethical thinking lead to formulation of X laws. It is this formed laws also rework, and this also influences what is the XYZ psych or XYZ ethics of the society. Laws set a minimum standard for ethical behavior. For example, laws against theft and murder reflect ethical principles like respect for others' property and lives. Similarly, law influences social or ethical values. We already told the Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, Domestic Violence Act 2005. This has empowered women to protest against the injustice they are facing, or these laws has empowered this scheduled tribe or scheduled caste people who has been discriminated at different walks of life. Right to similarly, you can think about Right to Information Act, which has led to considerable improvement in governance system throughout the country. Now you can go and file an RTI in any of the government office throughout the country, and the government office has to provide the XYZ data to the citizen. It created a system of culture of openness, created a culture of transparency, responsibility, accountability in governance systems. We'll study this in detail in further classes. So that's all the relation between law and ethics. I hope you can frame arguments. I hope you can give some of the novel examples and create one of classic answer if question come in exploring some kind of relation between law and ethics. Let's move ahead. Similarly, we will also consider the relationship between law and religion. Already told, what is the key difference between religion and ethics? That is, the ethics is based on critical thinking and rationality. At the same time, religion is based on faith and beliefs. Ethics is an external standard. It's an objective framework to guide behavior. At the same time, religion is a set of beliefs. There is no need to be given a solid proof for XYZ beliefs. Can be right, it can be wrong, but ethics will be subjected to whether it is right, whether the approach is right, if there is a flaws in the approach of this XYZ approach in XYZ situation. All this will be critical analysis will be done in ethics, but no such analysis is there in religion. In case of religion, it is based on faith. You have to believe XYZ things. It is related to one's connection with spirituality or one connects idea of God and one's connection with it. Now, does religion influences ethics? Very much true. Best example is Gandhi. Gandhi's principle ethics of ahimsa. It is influenced from Hinduistic religious thoughts. It is influenced from XYZ religious verdicts. American philosopher William Jones, his book is Varieties of Religious Experience. He explored the relation between religion and ethics, and he argues that religious experiences can provide a source of moral guidance and inspiration. Religious experiences can provide a source of moral guidance and inspiration, but ethical principles should be grounded in the reason. That he is comparing and contrasting what is the major ground of reason between ethics and religion. Punishment for blasphemy, harsh laws in religious countries. You can think on examples how this religion still continues to impact the XYZ ethics of the people living there. Like no third gender identity is given in many of the religious countries. Extreme punishment is given for critical thinking, open thinking, etc. Ethics of ancient era, slave trade was ethical. Sati was ethical. This is also a part of religious system. So many different ways religion does influence ethics. Now come to the other part of the argument, that is, does ethics influences religion? Also, ethics does influence religion. You can see so much of socio-religious movements starting from 18th centuries running throughout in the present times also. So what is the basis of all this socio-religious movement? This socio-religious movement has its basic in ethical thinking, has its base in critically analyzing whatever the social practices, social customs the countries were having. And Western, coming in close contact with Western society or British society, act as a catalyst for this. Similarly, you can think of B.R. Ambedkar. Due to its ethical mindset, he left Hinduism at the later part of his life. Then he went into Buddhism movement was started in India. Considering that there is no hope for lower class people in Hinduism, he started the Buddhism movement. Millions of his followers has also left Hinduism and joined Buddhism. Socio-religious movements I already discussed, like Dalai Lama is one of the major propounder. He stresses on religious practices. He stresses on ethics in all the religious practices. His great word is ethics is more important than religion. Despite being a religious head, this is the perspective he keeps. Similarly, the Sabarimala verdict, the religious XYZ contact was being questioned by the Supreme Court. The verdict went against the religious practice and allowed women of all ages to have entry into Sabarimala. Western, there is more dimensions you should ponder on this. One is the Western school of thought. Western school of thought considers that there should not be any relation between ethics and religion. This should be kept completely independent, similar to the Western conceptualization of secularism. Religion and ethics should be completely different. One of the major proponents of this is Immanuel Kant. Ethical principles are derived from reason and are not dependent on religion on any basis. He categorically avoids all the XYZ influences of religion on ethics. There are some contemporary developments going on in relation between ethics and religion. One of the religious leaders like Jiddu Krishnamurti, Sadhguru, they are trying to propound religion as a scientific spiritual exploration. Scientificization of religion is happening. Similarly, Richard Dawkins, his book, The God of Delusion, the belief in God is irrational. He is one of the propounders of atheism or propounders of anti-God movement. He says that the belief in God is irrational and that religion is harmful to society. Even this movement is getting traction in today's society. Taslima Nasreen from Bangladesh, one of the most liberal writers from Bangladesh. She says that religious beliefs are often used to justify oppression and discrimination against women and other marginalized groups. Religious practices, religious customs are all coming under stringent, you can say, questioning, stringent criticism. Critical awakening is happening at different levels at different parts of the world. So this is the whole construct. So on that note, we wrap it out today's class. So what we have learned now is, we have learned what is the meaning of ethics. We have learned different frameworks to think in different approaches. We have learned different ethics, different branches of ethics like meta ethics, normative ethics. Then we've learned about values, how values are being formed. And at the later part, we see the relationship of ethics with law, relationship of ethics with morality, relationship of ethics with religion. Now what you have to do is, you have to ponder more on each and every heading. This subject is more about application. The more you think on it, the more you can relate it with different examples, different movies you see, different books you read, different XYZ tweets you come across. I urge you to follow different policy institutes, including Niti Aayog, Public Policy Institute in India, and n number of policy institutes throughout the world to follow that. WTO organization, UN organization, follow their Twitter account. Then whenever you are using this Twitter or any other social media account, if you find some catchy examples, you note down in your workbook. That's how you can bring uniqueness into your answers. So these are 5 set of practice questions. Do go and check out, answer this question, and see how much you can apply different framework of thinking in each of these questions. So yeah, I can take a screenshot. That's all for now. Now never miss out this, the orientation 7 by P. Shravan Kumar. He has scored exceptionally high marks in this year ethics. So you will definitely gain some of the insight what XYZ new things he has implemented, so that his marks have been so high in ethics. You will definitely gain. Do go through his session in the YouTube, or next week it will be uploaded. So we have these 2 programs, ethics mains test series and ethics mask improvisation program. This is a 20-hour lecture series on which cover all the XYZ of ethics, how you should approach ethics, how you should answer writing, everything will be covered under this. While the mains test series is a dedicated test series, but the only difference here is, instead of simply checking the answers, giving you the copies, we will check the answer. I will sit in front of you and check the answer by explaining you each and everything, like what your introduction is going wrong, what exactly is the pattern of mistakes, that what exactly is the improvisation needed, is the conceptual clarity that is lacking, is the argumentative quality that is lacking, or is lack of substantiation that is hurting the answers. What exactly is the problem in the answer copy? We will have an open discussion. Then we decide what should be the course of action we should take in our preparation. This we will have on a regular basis. On every test, after every test, we have this discussion. So that's all for now. I hope everything is clear. We will have an open session on ethics preparation sooner or later. That's all. Thank you so much.